Welcome to Issued for Construction. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today I am in New York. This is number 3 in my New York series, and I am here with a very talented company and 2 very talented individuals whom you're going to learn about very shortly. I was very excited about this. Thankfully, introduced to this practice through a gentleman that I come to know previously at a different practice who's now working in marketing at Henning Larsen. Yes, so now we've revealed what the practice is. So thank you, Joey, for reaching out to me. I just want to say it. Today I've got with me Daniel Baumann and Vanessa Kassabian from the New York office of Henning Larsen. The 2 of them are helping to run the studio here, and we're going to learn all about their career, their life, and what else? We're going to learn about their families. We're going to learn about projects. And so I will turn it to the 2 of you, and I will ask, 1, where were you born? And 2, what was life like where you were born? Family, interests. I'm looking at you, Daniel, but I'm going to turn to Vanessa first because why not? Let's start with you, Vanessa.
Probably because I'm older.
Or elegant in general.
So I was born and grew up in Texas, San Antonio through middle school, Houston in high school. And I grew up with kind of a matriarchal household.
Okay.
So basically, anything that kind of needed to be done around the house and construction, hanging blinds, patching drywall, I got to do all of that.
Vanessa, hanging blinds, patching drywall, growing up in a house where everybody pitched in. And by the end of a day like that, you are exhausted. What you want is something cold. Maybe it is a popsicle out of the freezer. Maybe it's a juice box. Maybe it is just a handful of ice dropped into your glass of water. You open that fridge looking for some kind of reprieve from the work that you've just put in. And later that night, you're looking to get some of those calories back. You don't know it at the time because you're not calling them calories. Remember, you're a kid, but food coming together on a cooktop or in an oven. And if you're lucky, every dish from that meal goes straight into the dishwasher instead of into your hands or that sink. That is Kaplan's appliances. The appliances in your home are not just tools. They are a daily reminder that a cold glass of water, a hot meal, a clean kitchen is always within reach. Kaplan's has been fulfilling that for generations here in Toronto and beyond. They carry every major appliance vendor you would want. Sub-Zero, Wolf, Miele, La Cornue, Fisher & Paykel, Jenn-Air, and plenty more. Building an outdoor kitchen, they've got you covered there too. DCS Outdoor, Wolf, Urban Bonfire, and suppliers beyond that. But what actually sets them apart is the staff and the culture. For Kaplan's, the sale and the delivery are not the finish line. They're the starting line, the beginning of a relationship built on trust and service that goes well past that first transaction. They want to be your point of contact for service for years after you have made the purchase. They want it to be a generational relationship. To find out more, head to the liner notes or send me an email and I'll make an introduction. My email address is jonathan, Jonathan, at issuedforconstruction.ca. And while you're at it, give the podcast 5 stars wherever you're listening. It helps with exposure, and follow along on Instagram to see all the projects we talk about here. But for now, back to Vanessa, and shortly thereafter, Daniel.
So started the interest of architecture was very early for me.
Interesting.
Took a drafting class in middle school and kind of never looked back, honestly. I guess you hear it a lot from people, but I definitely wanted to be an architect from a very, very young age.
I don't hear it as often. No. Out of, let's say, maybe 200 people that I've spoken to, I maybe hear it 10% of the time.
Wow.
Really? That's
Yeah.
unusual.
Yeah. A lot of people. I had some people that talk about like they were going to go into like science and medicine and then switch.
Really?
Yeah.
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 No,
They switch majors and university and realize it's not for them.
focused on architecture from a young age. My grandmother was an art teacher.
Okay.
So I think that was an interest also very early. And my mother was an interior designer. So it's kind of been in the family, and I was exposed to design from an early age and just fell in love with it. And luckily my high school in Houston had a drafting class as well. And
Amazing.
so, and I was the only female in it, which was also a lot of fun. So, but I kept at it all the way through, went to Tulane in New Orleans.
Oh, hold on. Before we get there, there's you just like skipped over 20 years of your life. What about, what were your interests? What else were you doing outside of school? What other classes did you have, had piqued your interest? Were you into sports? Were you into crafts? Were you an outdoors person?
I competed in gymnastics.
Okay.
Since probably most of my life, since I was like 6 years old.
What was your favorite element of gymnastics?
I liked the floor exercise. So, I mean, I liked the kind of dance aspect of it. This is going to seem funny, especially for Daniel, but I got too tall for it. So I gave it up, and I did dance in high school as well. But was never really on a team sport. It was more of an individual, and focused on that through up until high school, and then in
what kind of dance were you doing?
Kind of modern dance, I guess.
Yeah.
I was on the dance team in high school as well. So I'm big into sports. So being, watching others play sports.
Yeah. Well, Texas.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I don't think you can live in Texas and not be a fan of sport.
Well, no, probably not. Yeah. I was a cheerleader in college at Tulane. Yeah. So for the football team, which is interesting because now and it took me a long time before I actually watched Friday Night Lights. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Of course I am. Yes.
So definitely interested in sports. We're big Knicks fans now in my household. So, and they're doing great.
They are doing great. They've finally put it together.
Yeah.
After 20 years of trying to figure it out.
And we've been following them religiously ever since. We moved to New York. And my son is 16, just turned 16 yesterday, and he's a baseball player. He's a catcher.
Okay.
So yes, always interested in sports. We're big advocates for that.
Well, it teaches you rigor. It teaches you about communication. It teaches you about what you're capable of doing. It pushes you on your boundaries, and especially if you're playing gymnastics. It teaches you to move through injury, how to load management.
And then when you get to a certain age, the fear kind of kicks in. Some of these things of like, oh, wow, I could really get hurt doing this.
Right.
And
did you get to travel when you were as a part of either gymnastics, dance, or cheer? I
did. I traveled a little bit, mostly around Texas for gymnastics.
Okay.
But in high school, we went to the Aloha Bowl in Hawaii.
Yep.
So we did a little bit of traveling there. We went to the Bahamas for a dance competition.
Do you remember what it was like when you were all getting on the plane with all of your friends, and how amazing and excited that must have been? Exciting?
I don't recall, actually. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't recall actually getting on the plane and doing all of that. I remember being there and the experiences from that, but I don't.
And the drastic change of weather once you're in the Hawaiian Islands, and it goes from
that wasn't. Okay. It wasn't that different than Texas, probably.
Fair enough. Okay, and then, but you knew coming through high school that you wanted to be an architect. Yeah. So had you been building your portfolio with the drafting class so that when you applied to Tulane, you were ready? I
did, and I actually applied. Ironically, to Pratt here in New York as well as Tulane, because I was still on the fence as to, I definitely wanted to do architecture, but design was always really important to me just holistically, with my grandmother as an art teacher. So,
yeah. But
I think that, the excitement of going from Texas to New York was also a little bit daunting. So going to Tulane was a little closer to home. And,
right.
About 5-6 hour drive. Far enough away from home, but also not too far.
Same state.
No. Well, New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. That was my lack of geography. Yeah, I apologize. I feel stupid for that one.
I mean, probably Texas would love to absorb New Orleans, but yeah, so it was touching, close.
Yeah, fair. And when you arrived, did you feel like you had arrived to what you were forecasting and expecting for yourself? And I say that meaning like you had this expectation of going into the field. So when you arrive there and you're with other like-minded people in a program like that, did you feel like, okay, I'm now with the people that I connect with? Or did you always kind of feel like that? No,
it was definitely, it did feel like all of a sudden there was a group of people that really kind of had similar interest.
Right.
And it was the first time, honestly. You know, being on a gymnastics team was one thing where everybody came together and had a real, passion for what they were doing. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't had that in high school or pursuing this. And so it was all of a sudden, there were 100 kids from all over the country, and some international, in fact, as well. But that was the first time that it was like, wow, this is something that we can all kind of, rally around. And I think in schools also, especially architecture schools, there's this kind of camaraderie and people, stay late.
Yes.
It's got a very demanding schedule for these studio reviews. And so there's a lot of bonding that happens over the course of that time as well. And then at Tulane, there was about 100 of us that started. And by second year, Tulane was a 5-year program. Yeah, it was about 50. Yeah. So it kind of weeds down the people that really want to pursue the career as, as architecture.
It's like Survivor, Jeff takes his what's like he snuffs the flame.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think people can appreciate what it takes to be able to go and make it in a competitive field, and schools intentionally try to make it that way. Right?
That's such a problem, I think.
Do you?
Yeah, that architectural education has to be such a challenge, like a destructive environment.
It does.
Right?
It is.
I mean, there are degrees of it, right? But some schools,
it has to be. Come on.
I don't know.
It has to be. Otherwise, what you'll get people that don't fully know that this is for them, that don't have the work ethic, that are going to enter the field.
No, I'm not sure.
No?
I do think that I taught in Copenhagen for 5 years, and I do think that it wasn't the same destructive environment that I myself experienced in school. And I will say that there is a way of making people realize that maybe this is not for them without making them cry in reviews or without being a complete asshole. And
yes,
I don't know.
I would agree with that.
Right. There's ways where you can create an environment that is supportive, but also where serious conversations can happen. And it doesn't have to be. I think there's a pedagogical sandwich of here's how you improve, but here's what you did really well. I just think that there is something about architectural education that is profoundly has changed to the better in the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
Also, kids are not accepting everything anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think the methodology behind what you do in school is different.
Yeah.
Some of the best classes and the most enjoyable for me was one of where we did construction. We poured concrete vessels. So it was like starting about materiality. So those things where you could hands-on and touch, how buildings could come together was some of the most interesting classes for me.
I think there's a difference between being excited and explore and understanding that you have to grow. So therefore you have to invest time and dedicate yourself to something. And then the stress of, being thrown into something without the tools to do it and told please here become something.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference between that. One has energy, the other has destructive energy, which
and you don't in school it was definitely a situation where you don't really learn what you're going to do in the profession.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the challenges, even as you kind of move through architecture, your profession, that we've been talking a lot about it in the office here is we all go into architecture to be designers and to kind of think about how, buildings hopefully affect the environment. But there comes a time in a lot of careers where you start to kind of fork and you either kind of pursue design or you pursue management, and you're definitely not taught management. And that's why designers go into architecture. But there is a need for that. There's a need for strong managers within the architectural profession. And that's a hard decision, I think, for a lot of architects to make in terms of like, which path do you want to go on? And even as you progress in your career, we've talked a lot about this as well, where we don't draw anymore. So we'll sketch and stuff, but there is, these kind of steps that you kind of move past that and taking on a leadership role where you are not the one that's necessarily, pursuing every day to day on a project.
Right.
And I think that's a hard transition for a lot of people. And you're not taught that in school in terms of, you're not taught about management. You're not taught about the finances and scheduling.
Yes. Operations, hiring, firing, putting together an overall plan for what the studio is going to look like and how it's going to run. Culture, all of those things. You don't learn any of it. So before we started recording, you were talking about how there's the opportunity to go and maybe go do talks, right? From the things I've learned. That what you're talking about now is what I would actually go and talk about what it looks like to go and run an operation, because it is the single greatest failure that I see from everyone that I talk to. Globally, no school positions anything to do with business management as a part of the degree.
And in some ways, I think that the managers are stronger that come in that have a background in architecture or design. And that's where I think, you kind of have to understand the process of building and designing to be a good manager in a way. Not that's a generalization, of course, but you need, and we're just not taught that. We're not taught that in school. And I think it's a real struggle.
I think that's also, in a way, it is the beauty of the architectural profession is that it's not, I imagine, I think it's very different than other professions where you graduate as a biochemist and you're an incredibly successful biochemist. And you obviously you learn and expand your knowledge as you grow. But in architecture, when you graduate, you have learned a portion of the skills that you will need to use for your practice. And it's a continuous learning effort, right?
Yes.
So it's and
it's actually mandatory. To be able to retain your license, continued education.
I keep thinking about what I sort of hold on to always when in my darkest moments is Louis Kahn designed his best buildings when he was 50, right? And I think that is essentially a little bit the thing that we're all suffering from is that we don't know anything when we graduate. I remember thinking what have I spent these last 6 years on? I know how to render really well, but I have no idea how to put a wall together. And I think it's just one of those things where it's a profession where now AI has hit us and we all have to learn new tools, right? It's just it's constantly changing. Yeah.
And even once you do, when you build a building and you go through the whole process, you take things from that process to the next project, but every project is different. Everything. So it's not okay, now I've mastered this. So let's, now I'm going to do great on the next project. It's all different. Clients are different. Typologies are different.
I just wish we could get paid better for the work that we do.
Well, that's also why, business managers or people in finance are not gravitating towards the architectural profession.
Yes, you can't make it.
No, it's not necessarily a
lucrative career. No, it depends. It depends on scale of the practice and what you want to do and how many projects you want to take on. Because I know some people that will take on, much fewer projects, not at a large scale of operation, charge a decent fee, and can make good money. It's just a different model.
I also think that you can make a business out of it, but I think the difference, and I think we are doing well, and we're doing fine. Yeah. But I think the difference is that you have to adjust salaries to all your folks to the level of fees that you're able to secure.
Yes, of course.
Right? So there's just this inherent disconnect between the value that you produce for a client and the fees that you're able to take as a consultant. Yes. Because eventually you're offering a consultancy.
Yes.
And the value that you're putting out there into the market is, that's for 25, 50, 60 years of value that you're creating that you're not being compensated for. And so I think there is a disconnect between that. And so I think in New York City, we're competing against folks who work in other fields in tech and finance and whatnot. And, you graduate at like 26 and you're out there making triple digits within the first 1 or 2 years because it's a model that's just much faster. So I think we're competing for talent in that pool of people who are just growing much slower because we have to learn a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's a learning profession. And it takes 5 years to build a building. So it takes 5 years to have.
You're lucky if it only takes 5 years.
Yeah.
You come to Toronto, it's going to take you 10.
I mean, in New York, I think it takes like 15.
Yeah.
Stop and starting.
But
Yeah,
we're competing against time in the sense like the eagerness of people to grow and learn, which is the hold up against the realness of building something, which just takes time.
Yeah.
Right.
In the same way, you lose half the student body in your second year of school. I think a lot of architects step away from architecture after 1 or 2 years as well.
Yeah.
When they realize that.
Well, I mean, it also depends on when you enter the market. I've so many people I've spoken to entered the market in the early 90s and 91, 90, 91, 92, and there was the recession. And then, I don't know, a whole other cohort of people that came through and, were looking for jobs 2008, 2009, and there's another recession. So when you enter the marketplace, completely can be dictated by what's going on economically. And it can change the trajectory of those that are either going to come into the field and practice it, or those that come into the field and realize that there's nothing there are no jobs, and they completely deviate on what their plans were. And now they're doing something completely different.
That's true, but I do think that architectural school teaches you to do a multitude of different things. So, I've got friends, there's of course a lot of architects that teach as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you also have, designers that move into product design or to set design.
Yep.
There's a lot of, whether, or material research or now there's sustainability. I mean, at one time, architecture too was kind of holistic. An architect kind of did.
Yeah, jack of all trades.
Yeah, and now everything is very specialized.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is something nice about architecture school and being able to kind of open doors for other types of professions. You don't absolutely always need to be an architect.
Yes.
Open doors. Well, let me take that from an analogy into reality for a second, because I want to tell you about the Doors, a European window and door manufacturer that has been alongside Issued for Construction for a couple of years. They supply really high quality windows and doors for residential and small commercial projects. Everything from vinyl and fiberglass to aluminum and aluminum wood clad and steel, all low profile, all built around a high quality thermal break, with the glass being the premier focus of the install, not the frame. They work in double and triple pane glass, everything from standard bills all the way up to passive house. They can do 20 feet tall glass, 20 feet wide glass, wall to wall corner glass, or full wall to ceiling connection point that takes in every bit of the view. They have their own cutting machine right here in Toronto for their aluminum products, their own spider crane for local installations, and they work throughout North America, the Caribbean, and the Bahamas. The company is owned by husband and wife Marta and Martin, and they have been installing this kind of product for over 20 years across North America. If you want to learn more about what it is like to work with them, head to the liner notes or just email me directly. It's Jonathan@issuedforconstruction.ca. That's JONATHAN @issuedforconstruction.ca. And I'll make an introduction to them and their team. And don't forget that if you're listening, you can follow along on Instagram, but also you can give this podcast 5 stars. It helps with exposure. And if you're enjoying it, why not? You can press pause right now and do it. And now, let's go back to Daniel and Vanessa.
Well, I think actually it was interesting. I was talking to your friend Kate in Calgary, and one thing she was saying is that she was working with the architecture. Her dream was that architects started working in many other professions in architecture, right? Like fields of research and that creative thinking, like that process that you learn can actually be applied to other industries. That your understanding of process and creation and that those things can be applied to almost any field. And she was working very hard to sort of expand what that field could be. And I thought that was really interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that way before, that you learn a process and a method.
Yeah.
And that you can almost apply that anywhere.
Yeah. And she's a great example of having built a neighborhood. And I think that that's also something that Henning Larsen has kind of been focused on. Is it's not just architecture, of course, it's urban design, planning, landscape, research, sustainability. But that's critical, to be able to have and develop places within cities and densification that's happening. So I think that that's an important aspect of our profession, definitely here, and focusing on creating places for people for the future.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, tell me, I guess we got to the point where you were talking about where you went and what that was like and what the experience was like. And then we get the beauty of, this is why I like this format, by the way. I told you you'd be diffused in a couple of minutes, right? So we've heard your story, Vanessa. Let's go, Daniel, over to you and talk about where were you born? What was it like? What led you down this career path? What was family like?
Yeah, nice. I really liked hearing about I hadn't heard that before. It made me think I was born my mom is German. Both of my parents are German, actually.
Yeah.
I was born in South Germany as a result of a teenage pregnancy. My mom was 19 when she had me, in a very conservative Catholic family. And she then married my stepdad when I was 3, and we moved to Copenhagen, where I grew up. So I don't really remember being in Germany, but Germany to me has always been this sort of holiday land where you go and you gain 10 pounds over the summer when your grandma just like stuffs food down your throat. It's always wonderful. But I
like that you say all of that totally straight faced.
But it's true. Like my mom would be on the phone when I would come back from those trips, and she would be like, I just made him lose weight. And now he's fat again. And it was just like a whole thing. Like, anyway, it was wonderful. Like I also grew up in a very matriarchal household. Like it was definitely like there was this South Germany at the time, and especially in Catholic families, very conservative. Like daddy brings home the bacon and mom is like, but there was no doubt who was running the household, right? My grandma was steering that ship from the back seat, and she was doing that very clearly. I have 3 aunts, my mom and her 2 aunts. And I always, both my grandma on my dad's side and my mom's side, I always sort of attribute those 2 and my aunts and my mom to like, those are the people who put the good values in me. That my dads were always like strangely, weirdly absent or idiotic. But the moms were the ones who were like making things happen, and children was like, oh, don't worry about it. Just go do your thing. And so I grew up in Copenhagen, which was great. It was a very different, I think if I'd grown up in South Germany, my mom is from a very like working class family, but my stepdad is, they were in a much better financial place. And Copenhagen was a great place to grow up. It's very safe. And I was a really nerdy, introverted kid. And like I would go explore the city on my bike. And I loved these old like Victorian, like, there was that phase of architecture where everything is a story, everything is a symbol. I loved exploring that. And
that was at a young age. How old were you?
I was like 9, 10.
Okay.
And I would draw a lot. I was really excited by like ocean liners of the early 20th century, these big machines that had these sort of period environments inside. I thought that was really fascinating. So I would read a lot and I would do that a lot. I hated sports. I was really bad at everything. My stepdad sent me to all the sports ones after another, and I failed at all of them. It was a horrible
That's
experience.
Hard to believe.
What?
That's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Vanessa's saying that because Daniel is rather tall and a formidable figure.
6'6".
And what, like 230? 240?
Yeah, 245.
Yeah. Like he,
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think I never developed a love for sports.
Which is fair.
I just remember being outside of my grandparents' like house in the summers and hearing my grandpa sit inside yelling at the TV when soccer was going on. I was just like, this is so dumb. So dumb. Like, how can you get so excited? But I appreciate the love. I feel like everyone should have their fetishes, and sports can be one of them.
Sports is one of them. Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
as well as travel.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about what sports is, and I think the reason why so many people have an affinity for what sport is because it gives you an opportunity to be able to forget about everything else and focus on that in your mind is now just honed in on the craft of what it is. Technique matters a lot in most sports to avoid injury. Yeah. And so you're tapping into just a different innate quality of who you are. Yeah. Even as a spectator in sport. Yeah. You allow yourself to forget about the other things that are happening in your life and focus on the people that are in front of you that are professionals of the craft that you think you can do better because you can yell at them from the stands. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. No, I agree.
And the same though for reading, I think. Yeah. When you said that was something that I did nonstop.
Yeah. Read?
Yeah. I'm an only child. You also?
No, I have 4 siblings.
4 siblings. You said sisters. But I read all the time.
And what were you reading? Were you reading fiction, nonfiction? What were you reading?
Mostly fiction. Okay. So I loved the sort of spy and thrillers and science fiction, and I still love all of that today. But that is something that you can. I feel like you can definitely focus on from. Similar to sports. You kind of put everything aside. You can kind of dedicate yourself to a book.
And do you still read like you used to?
I have actually started reading a lot more this year. That was kind of like one of the focuses that I wanted to bring back into my life because I loved it so much and had for years stopped reading.
And do you read physical copies or do you read on a Kindle?
I do both.
Okay.
I do both. I prefer books. Yeah. But also, them kind of stacking up next to the bedside table is, so I kind of go back and forth, honestly.
I always think it's funny when my wife, Wendy, she reads on a Kindle, and every now and again they'll be like, I don't have power for my book. And I'm like, that's funny. That's funny.
But audiobooks too was one that I've only done a couple of those audiobooks, but that's, it's like, is that really, are you reading the book? Yes, it is. But but you read a lot, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
So you were saying, so you're biking around, you're taking a look at, and you're drawing.
I'm drawing a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what else were you doing to occupy your time? Did you have any friends that you were going and experiencing this with, or
I had a couple of close friends, but I was a really introverted kid.
Okay.
And that's changed a lot since. And I had a few close friends, but none of them really shared. And I was just kind of embarrassed about it. So I'd always try to hide all these. I think for me, like the architecture was about storytelling. I would make up stories about these drawings. I would make about these places I would explore, about these like ships that I would design and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's something that stuck with me, this sort of the narrative quality of like thinking through a space and stuff like that. I think that has really stayed with me all these years. But I was hiding it because I had a really destructive relationship with my stepdad at that time. It was, he I think is a not a very kind man, but we've gotten better over the years. But at the time, he definitely made me feel like I was, not doing the right things, and so I felt
that's tough, man. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I feel like it's like something I learned from. It definitely lit a fire under my ass when I grew old enough to like prove him wrong in many ways. And we have a cordial relationship today. I mean, I think he was more dad than my real dad ever was. And I appreciate that. But it was as a teenager, it was tough. And I think that sort of experience of like having to lift yourself up from that and open yourself back out to the world was like quite formative in some ways. And I think that was, for architecture, like arts was my like refuge in a way. But I did like when I finished high school, I remember leaving high school and just thinking, and I had I was happy. I came out in the second year of high school. I was happy. But I remember thinking like, I'm never going to be in a situation where I have to be forced to be friends with people ever again. Mm-hmm. And that's like, we get to choose.
Pretty
people.
Empowering feeling to reach that stage, right?
Yeah. And then I was in the Navy for a while, and it was like in Denmark. In Denmark, you do conscription service.
Okay.
But then, so you draw a lottery, you draw a number, and then you had to do your service. And I volunteered to do, the Navy runs 2 tall ships, which are like these old sailing ships. I did that. And that was that was probably one of the best experiences of my life.
Why?
Well, because suddenly there was purpose to everything. And it was, they selected me, you got pre-selected to lead a team. And they just did that they just did it because I'd finished high school. A lot of the other kids hadn't.
Right.
A third of the kids on that boat were like, you were between 17 and 21 or 23, I think was the oldest one. And a third were like kids who had been in some sort of like trouble with the law, who had to it was like this
rehabilitation in some capacity.
And the rest were like cadets or volunteers.
Yep.
And so they had sort of selected me to lead a group. And there were I think 6 people, so 10 people in the group. And then there were two groups in a shift. There were 3 shifts. You would sail the ship around the clock and you just had to make it work. And I just remember having this experience. This was the first time in my life that I was like in a group of people that were very different than me. Like we had some people who had never finished elementary school, like who had a hard time functioning academically. And we had these like sessions every week where you had to talk about how things were going. Like I think it's very Danish. Like it was called mental health. It was a mental health moment.
Yeah.
And at some point, and you just
how long ago was this? How many years ago?
I was like 20 years ago. I was 18.
Yeah. Okay.
It was right after 19. It was right after high school.
Okay.
But you sit in these circles and you're always tired, right? You're sailing this, you're learning how to sail. You have classes on engine care and navigation and all this stuff.
While you're out at sea.
Yeah. And it's like you're learning all of this while you're making it happen. And you sleep in a hammock tied under the boat. You have a tiny little closet. You're wearing
Come on, you're sleeping in a hammock?
You're sleeping in a hammock.
Sounds awful.
How many people were on the boat?
It's a beautiful old tall ship from the 30s. It's like, I want to say like 35 meters long, which I don't know how much. It's not big. It's a full
100 feet.
100 feet long.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You're like, there were 60 cadets and
60.
officers.
Wow.
Could you imagine? You say is amazing. Like you sleep in a hammock long enough and your legs go numb.
No, it's like you tie them up. Like the thing is like, if you sleep in a banana shape.
Yeah.
But like you tie them up like completely straight under the ceiling of I don't know what you call it in English, but then it's straight. Okay. And as the ship sort of, you're steady, right? So you're completely, you never feel the sort of. You never
feel the motion sickness.
Motion.
Yeah.
It sort of cradles you.
Interesting.
It's the best sleep I've ever had. It was great.
Best sleep you've ever had.
Yeah, because you were exhausted.
So then I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you not sleeping in a hammock now?
Well, I had thought about it right after. I definitely thought about it. But it's like, you have to have a whole setup for that.
Yeah, okay.
I live in New York. I don't have the setup for it.
Okay, fair.
But anyway, my experience with that was that, we had these, everyone was exhausted. And at some point we had one of these like mental health, moments.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kids who had been placed on the ship was basically saying had this anger breakout where he was just shouting at everyone. He was like, I can't believe I have to deal with these freaking high school students who are just using long words no one understands. And I was just like, oh, this is what the problem is. We think that we're actually very different. And there's all this animosity because there's this anticipation of you are a certain person in this environment and you're doing all these things. And so it is the first time that you had to sort of figure out how to get through that. And it was really a good learning experience.
Yeah, because you literally have to figure it out. You're on a boat, you're with a tight group of people, and you've got to make it work.
Yeah. And
can't walk away.
Yeah, and we woke up one morning and we were on the 4 shift, the 4 to 8 shift, which is 4 to 8 in the afternoon and 4 to 8 in the morning. And we got woken up one morning at 3:30 and the ship was at 45 degrees. There was it was a storm. We were all tied up the entire day. You're just spending tied up on deck, pouring away people's vomit. Because it's you're halfway underwater, you just have one sail set and just going at it. And it's it was so scary and it really bonded everyone. But it was you just have to make that work somehow.
I'm glad you went there because I was going to ask you if you ever had any close calls on the boat.
It was not a close call by any means, but it was incredibly scary. The officers were not worried. We were worried. We were in there
So do you still sail? Do you?
No, not at all. I've completely forgot it. I mean, the thing that I realized that what I was good at was like I was good at navigation. I was good at the stuff where you have to put a pencil down and draw a line and figure out how to do that. I was never good at tying knots. I like the practical side of this I was not very good at. And I didn't want a career at sea after that. I went to drawing school.
Fair. I will say this, that I have this affinity, this love. There's videos online of people just taking a rope and kind of snapping their wrist, and it goes into a tied form.
Oh yeah.
Really quickly. And it's I love watching those videos and watching people do that and make really quick knots, marine knots. It's like some small ism of thing that I love, because there's a craft to it.
Right.
You've got to really learn how to maneuver and manipulate rope. So to your point, like
some people can really do it.
Some people are really good at that. So tell me this phase was in between high school and university?
Yeah, so I took 2 years out between high school and the other. So then I came back and I didn't have the grades to get into architecture school, but in Denmark you can do like the second route, which is basically that you do entry exams, but to get into the entry exam you have to like submit a portfolio and a drawing class. So I did a drawing class for 6 months at the Glyptotek, where we designed an extension for it that was finished around the time I was there. So I spent a lot of time in that museum. I didn't know I was going to work for Henning Larsen at the time, but I really like spending time in that particular building.
I love that.
Yeah.
You got to spend time inside of a product designed by a company that you'd eventually go work for.
6 months. It was a long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you got to experience it.
Yeah.
In the right way.
Yeah. And like also it was I don't think I've ever done something like that again, but it's like, you just spend a lot of time in a place.
Yeah.
And then I applied to the entry exam, and you had 3 days of tests of like creative tests, problem solving, and got into architecture school that way. It was nice.
And what was it like when you got in? How you walk in the doors? You tell me about all these other situations of having to like battle what you were the circumstance of the environment that you were in some capacity.
I think there was always like this sort of sense of trying to find your legs in that environment, right? And it took me a little bit to find my legs, but once I found them, it definitely felt like it was like digging into something you knew how to do, which is, I think I know if you had that experience, but like once you figure out, well, okay, these are the tools and something clicks. And I think that experience of when something clicks on a project or when something clicks on a design, we've all had that feeling. And the first time you have that feeling, you know it, right? And you remember it. And I definitely remember having that. And like the sense of like having found something that you're good at and just like diving into it. I loved it. I loved the camaraderie of architecture school. And I think to the point, like the architecture school in Copenhagen, the Royal Academy, that was like I felt like I had my first 3-4 years of schooling there it was like a love for architecture. It was a love for design. No one ever cried. Everyone worked hard, but there was not this sense of like getting it beaten out of you, right? And there was this sort of idea that there's like these old professors who were like sitting with you and they were teaching you how to do it. No one learned anything about construction or how to put things together, but you all learned the craft.
Yeah.
And I really think that sort of was great. Was it the best architects that come out of the school? I don't know. But like it was like a love for design that I think was really well founded.
Was urban planning a part of the curriculum?
No.
It wasn't.
Not at us. There was like, we were looking at cities, but more in a phenomenological, like what can we explore creatively from the city in the sense. I went back to teach there after I graduated. I didn't do my master's there, but it was nice to come back.
Right.
Yeah. The camaraderie is, I think, kind of a key thing too. Yeah. I feel like late at night or when there was a few of you in the studio and the discussions and talking about architecture was actually almost more rewarding, and you got more out of it than even when you were kind of talking to a professor. Yeah. There was a guidance from the professor, but there was a discussion around architecture in a different way when you were talking to your peers, which was really nice. And I think that in that regard, some of your closest friends come out of that. And I may not talk to my best friends from architecture school on a regular basis, but we, you know, can easily step right back into, you know, having that relationship that you feel like you've known forever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a comfort to that, right? And knowing
Definitely.
that like you might be in a scenario where you want to ask a question, but you don't want to ask the question internally. You might want to ask the question to people that are outside of the organization to be able to draw on that knowledge and the comfort.
I think there's also something about seeing what your peer, like, I think studio is so important. Like, I think it's also here, like, you see, I remember being able to see like who was good at something and who wasn't, right? And that through that experience being like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. I think there's something quite like formative about that experience, especially in the first couple of years.
Right.
It is,
Like,
and I
wow,
think
that
that
guy
is so good, but good at different things. And I
Yeah.
think that that's where studios, architectural studios and practices are where, you know, we kind of touched on it earlier, but maybe not everybody's strength is in design. You know, somebody may be more interested in kind of how the details go together. And so I think that, you know, especially as leaders of a firm, you have to kind of understand how to pair and partner those, that putting the team together is important, that not everybody needs to do and be the same architect or designer, but, you know, by complementing what people's strengths are, then that's what makes I think the strongest practices and projects. And I think that that's something that, you know, we've been really kind of working on here recently too, is to make sure that the teams are diversified and that, you know, you have the right people doing the right things.
So what did it look like, Vanessa, for you coming out of school and looking for your first job? And actually, before you answered that, just to preface it, did you have any form of co-op as a part of university, or did you intern anywhere during the course of university?
It wasn't required.
Okay.
At Tulane, I did do some internships. And one of the summers, I built models, like architectural models.
Using what
firms.
materials?
A lot of, you know, balsa wood, and before all of the technology and when the 3D printing was happening. But we actually physically built the models of the projects with, plastics and balsa wood, and it was, you know, airbrushing, doing a lot of that. So I did that a couple of years before graduating, and then, like you mentioned, I came out of school when the economy was just tanking, and worked. Ironically, I worked for a firm in DC. I moved to DC right after my 5th year at Tulane.
Okay.
Lived in DC for 5 years. And the first project that I worked on was actually a theater in Texas. So, you know, moved from Texas into DC to
go work on a project in Texas.
So that was, but that was something that I did for a couple years. And when I realized that, you know, I'd gone to school and was still paying a huge amount of money for the loans that I had taken out, and realized that the receptionist who had just gotten out of college as well was making more money than me, I decided to move on from that. So, yeah, it was kind of, I was like, that was an aha moment of, okay, maybe this isn't the right place for me. Stayed in architecture, of course.
But yeah, different practice.
Different practice.
And did you get to see the theater projects through?
No.
Okay.
No. Just did the drawings for it.
Okay.
So, and that was just when kind of AutoCAD and was coming online.
So I've seen early 90s? Mid 90s.
Mid 90s.
Mid 90s. Yeah.
So I kind of was going through that process of, I've seen, you know, the Mayline to kind of T-square all the way up to now we've got AI.
Yeah.
So it's been a huge transition for the tools that we're using in the profession. But as I mentioned, you kind of, once you get to, you know, a certain level of leadership in your career, you're doing a little bit less of that.
Right.
You know, the kids that are coming out of school, not kids, the young adults coming out of school are now the ones that are really facile and all of that, those tools that I think
you'd hope. You hope. Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's kind of something that we're focused on as well.
Yeah, bringing in that type of a talent that has the understanding of what's hot and new, so that as much as you might go to a conference or a workshop to learn about it, they're actually practicing it in school.
Yep.
Right? To be able to bring that knowledge and value to the business.
Yeah. Our firm has been very focused on helping everybody within the firm understand these tools, though. I think that that's something that's been really focused on, I think, at Henning Larsen, in terms of embracing the new tools that are coming in, making sure that the opportunity is there for everybody at all levels to experience that.
Okay. And what did it look like for you, Daniel? First job or two out of school?
Well, I mean, after undergrad, I did a master's in London at the Bartlett, which sort of brought me to the UK. And it was a very different experience.
How so?
Well, a couple of years ago, UCL, which is the Bartlett is under UCL, issued a report documenting the dysfunctional educational culture at the Bartlett School of Architecture. And it sort of gave me PTSD in a certain way, because it was such a reminder of what that period of life was like. Like, fourth year of architecture for me was just horrible. Like, I'd come from this like warm, embracing environment where there was always this pedagogical sandwich, to having like desk crits in hallways where people where my professor would tell me that, you know, I was no longer in some provincial outlet. I was now in London. I was competing with the big boys, and I had to like really level up. And I was just like on the phone with my mom crying. It's like being inserted back into the sports programs. Yeah, it really felt like that.
Yeah.
You know, and you were not giving the tools, but you were told this is the bar and you have to figure out how to get there. And I think it created this like environment where we all felt we were the worst kids who had ever entered the program. And we all had to fight. They told us on the first day 25% of us would fail. And, you know, you'd left with that, right? And so you just like work your way in from there. I made the best friends I ever had because we were in the trenches, like fighting.
And you need to support each other. You needed to have someone there to lift you up when you were down.
And you need somewhere to learn from, right? Because the professors would sit down with you for like a 45-minute like academic lecture on like something, and you would leave that being like so confused, and you'd be like, you had to learn how to then do something with that. And you learn that from your friends, I feel like. And there was one lesson that I learned from that is like, I was on the phone one time and I had never cried over architecture. Like, it was just architecture, right? And I was on the phone with my mom once, and I was crying. I said, like, I have to come home. I can't do this. And she said, like, you know, Daniel, the only way to deal with a bully is to set boundaries. You have to stop the bullying. And she was saying about my professors at the time. And I took that with me. We talked about it yesterday at the dinner, right? Like the rule of like, don't work with assholes. Like, I think it's so true. You have to just recognize, like, you have to push back, and you have to set boundaries, and you have to be like firm and be like, this is what I'm doing. I believe in it, and I'm going to do it. And so I graduated, and I did really well in fifth year. I got all these awards, and it was a terrible economic situation, right? It was 2010. It was like 2 years after the recession. London was just like tanking. But because I gotten nominated for this like President's Medal thing, and there was a lot of attention at the time, Foster's was hiring. So they hired like 3 or 4 of us straight out of school from the graduate show. And it was a horrible experience. It just went from like bad to worse. You know, it was really interesting because that is a great firm that does incredible work, but they're also just grinding through graduates, right? You were just like there on these incredibly long nights. I started with a friend of mine. We both started together. We were sitting a few desks apart. We were then working on the same project. Really nice people. You saw people like running away in tears. You had like partners throwing their phones at projects. Like, it was just like this like insane culture. So I lasted like 9 months, and through all of those 9 months, I was like desperately trying to get back to something else. And I had a friend who worked at Henning Larsen at the time, and I was like, can you forward my portfolio? And she introduced me to one of the partners at the time who got me in for an interview, and I eventually got that job. And it was just like a 180 from the culture at Foster's. It was just like, I had not been particularly focused. I was working as a model builder in undergrad for Henning Larsen, and I met Henning once when I was building a model. Like, I was building a model, and he came in and was like, what is it? We were doing these enormous projects in Saudi, these giant towers. And he looked at it and just like, I guess at least it's interesting. I just remember that very clearly. I was like, okay, sure. And so I didn't have a really relationship with him, but I was asking around, and one of my friends who was a landscape architect worked at a firm that I was working with him. And he said, like, there's really high ceilings. In Danish, you say high ceilings when there's a place where there's room for conversations and disagreements. Yeah. And that's something that I really think is the single strongest thing about this firm.
And that was before you had been given the job.
Yeah.
So was that I just wanted to have context. When was that? Was that in school? Okay.
It was 2011.
Oh, so this is while you were at Foster's.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to get this job and trying to get away from Foster.
And I guess what I'm curious, and I struggle with this myself, admittedly, when I have been at a place that I felt didn't really honor the value that I tried to bring to it. I feel tainted about it, and I don't want to talk about some of the positive things that came as a result of it, because I don't want to give it credit because it just felt wrong. But there's always something that you took away from it. So I'm curious, through the associated negative experiences that you had there, what was one of the things that you felt you actually were able to take away that made you a little bit better at what you did or more resilient?
Right. I mean, if you start with the Bartlett, one thing that I really learned there is pushing through the block, like pushing through that, not knowing how to do, and then just do and see what comes out. Like when you don't know how to attack something, you just start doing something. And like, if there was so much desperation, so you just learn, okay, I'll just start building this model. I'm just going to start building this thing. I'm just going to start drawing this thing. And through the process, I learned process at that place because it's just like, it's sort of sets the start and you go from there.
Right.
And creativity and trusting your intuition. I think that is the thing. And from Foster's, I just learned, first of all, like the rigor, like the rigor of just committing yourself to it and then just making it happen, and what you can actually achieve with a very small team in like very short time if you have enough structure around it. And then also just like the rigor of how you go through a process. We would issue these design books that were just like insane, right? There's so much, and that's what that firm is able to do. There's so much knowledge. The level is sky high. And it's just like they have a system, and they just execute the system. We don't have a system, which is sometimes very problematic, but that is impressive, I think.
Yeah, there is a whole range of different types of architectural firms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all the way from something that's so rigorous to also, there's a lot of mediocre architecture that's built these days. And, a lot of firms don't have the kind of designers in them that, talk about passion of architecture. That is about a dialogue. And that is something that we do a lot here. But I've worked for, a couple firms where they did very solid architecture, but you went in and you kind of did your work and there wasn't a dialogue. There wasn't a discussion about the process and about the project and making it better. I mean, and then I've also worked in a firm that just did so many kind of, regurgitated model after model after model, bloom foam models, and you would put them on a desk and you couldn't tell the difference between, maybe 10 of them, maybe 3 that looked very different. It's like, what's the point of just, doing these things for one little shift here or there? I think that there's a whole, there's something really interesting in the process and talking about architecture and the passion of having architecture, building buildings. That's also something that's really important for us, is that it's not just about design, but it's really important for us to build, to have the projects built.
Right.
And so I think that finding that balance, not all firms do that in terms of not only talking about design, talking about building, pushing the limit. And I think finding that right balance was really important to me. And that was kind of something that just kind of clicked,
right.
For me and Henning Larsen. So,
right. I find it interesting because, as I mentioned to you before, I have nothing to do with design. My background's not in it. And what I find so interesting about it is the importance of resiliency and, believing yourself and developing a network of people that can support where you want to go. So I just want to say to anyone listening that might be in school, or you might be a young architect, you might be, you could be senior, you could have been in this for a long time. Maybe your position where you are is not exactly where you want to be. And I think that one of the takeaways I have from both of you, and that I will also bestow from all the other conversations that I've had, is that if you reach a certain stage of career where you're dissatisfied, that you have to find the things that you can take from where you are that are going to promote your values, and that you can then transpose into the next role where you're going to find yourself in a better position. But to not lose sight of the fact that where you are, you're probably going to be learning something. Mm-hmm. And if there's something else that you could learn, you learn that while you're looking for the next opportunity to allow yourself to really go out and flourish.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't get locked into the negativity of it all. Find something there that you can take.
Right. I think there's a fine balance between setting boundaries and having patience.
Yes.
In a way, because I do think that it is a slow moving field that we're in, and you need to have the patience to sit through the grunt work sometimes and understand that, okay, this is, either you're not working on a project that's going to win the Pulitzer Prize, or you're working on a project where you're designing maybe not the most exciting aspect of it, but that it's part of a whole. And in that situation, like when I've been in these projects here, I've always been like, okay, can I identify with the people who are ahead of me? Mm-hmm. Do I like them? Mm-hmm. Like, do I believe that we're doing good work?
Right.
Maybe not all the time.
Yeah.
And do I feel like we're like I'm part of something that's moving in the right direction? I think that's the question you should ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because also to your point of being, disgruntled with your, school or your professors. I'm sure you had professors that you loved. That changed. You always remember kind of the worst and the best.
100%.
And I remember, and it does change, to your point that, you have to remember that the next one may be different, and you're just not going to click with everybody. But one of the big learning, when I first went to Pratt for graduate school, I had a professor that was very kind. He was very kind and very nice. And, but I was designing a project. It was like my first or second semester there. And, he came to me and he said, why all the boxes? Why are you building? Why is this all about boxes? And at that time, I couldn't necessarily explain why, but he pushed me in a direction that was so uncomfortable for me. And the project turned out terribly. And at that moment, I was like, I need to stand up for what I believe in and what I want to do and what feels right, because it was definitely not a great project. Yeah. Definitely probably the worst ones I've ever done. But it was probably also one of the big learning experiences for me.
I have to share this before I say it, this is about the two of you. But I also I would like to share these fun stories. So when I was in university, I was studying broadcast and print journalism, and yet here I am doing this. But I had a prof who was to what you described as your experiences at Foster and at Bartlett. I had a prof that was awful, awful, and there was a story that I wrote. And I had submitted for my first draft. And when she reviewed it and gave it back to me, the whole thing was red. Okay. So I took everything and I got something like a 78 on my first draft, which weighed 25% of the mark. I took all of her feedback and I wrote the entire story with her voice. And I submitted it. And when I got it back, I got a 71.
Oh, wow.
And I scheduled a meeting with her to discuss the mark. And I brought my draft and I brought my final draft. And I said, so here's my story. And you're telling me that your story was worse than my story. You gave yourself 7% lower of a grade than you gave me originally. So what do you think that says about you as a prof? This was, and she was, I can't believe that you would say this to me. And I was like, we can have a discussion with the dean of the school. Let's go have a discussion with the dean. Because what you're promoting is wrong. You should be empowering me, not trying to change my voice. And clearly the voice you're trying to promote is the wrong one.
But you learned something from that, right?
Totally. I learned that I need, to your point, and you need to stand up for what you believe in.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to call it out when it's in front of you and go find a better path.
Because if my professor had tried to force me and tried to make me understand and create a narrative around what I was doing, that would have been very different than pushing me in a different direction that he wanted to see. And that just was like not the right thing for me at all.
Yeah. So what did it look like past that? So I'll go back to you, Vanessa, about, the evolution of where you had started, where you had moved to, and then ultimately let's get to the point where you land here. So what are some of the other experiences that you had?
So I think I worked for a firm that had a really rigorous design process, an international design firm that grew in New York. I've been in, my career's all been in New York pretty much, besides DC for 5 years. But I would say that it was no work-life balance. I was married at the time, was working, 6 days a week till 10 o'clock at night. It forced me to really understand, I think, the rigor of a design firm, a specific design firm. And though it wasn't sustainable, it was probably one of the most formative firms that got me to where I am now. Had a very, very strong name recognition, which then got me into, the next design firm that I worked for 10 years. That firm, a Norwegian firm, had a much better work-life balance initially, but over the course of those 10 years became a little bit more Americanized, which then transitioned to less work-life balance. I think
North America, man, we suck.
But I remember, and looking back on it, I actually can't believe I did this, but when I first had my son, I would work until, I took 3 months off. I would work until about 6:30 at night. I would go home. I would put my son to bed, and I would come back to the office because it was before kind of the laptops and all of this.
No way.
I would go back and work until like 10:30, 11.
How close were you?
It was like half an hour. And so as my son kind of grew over the course of a couple years and he was staying up a little bit later, that became a little bit more challenging. And so that kind of balance, is, I think it's getting better for women, but, I always have thought of myself as an architect, honestly. It's been a real shift in the past few years where, women in the workforce and kind of like, trying to kind of create this work-life balance has been more discussed. But I never wanted or thought of myself as a woman architect or a female architect. And I didn't want to even have that discussion. I was an architect and I didn't want any sort of different treatment or any of that effect. And so I was proving to myself I could go home, I could come back, and it wasn't any issue until my son got to a point where he was staying up later, and that became too much of a challenge. And so made the decision that, I wanted to take a couple of years off and do some projects on my own because I wasn't giving 100%, or I didn't feel like I was giving 100% to either my child, my family, or work.
Right.
And so I've always worked on large kind of complex projects. So that 2 years, though incredibly rewarding to be with the family, wasn't as rewarding, in terms of my career.
So when you say large scale project, can you define what that would look like?
200 1,000 square feet, multi kind of use, cultural projects. I worked on a large project in Calgary for the Calgary Public Library for a long time. That was a 5 or 6 year process, which was really rewarding to go from kind of the competition phase to the opening of the project itself. And so, multi kind of functions and different typologies coming together was something that's important for me, kind of. But I think that the range, and we haven't really touched on this yet, or we did early on when we mentioned Kate, a lot in the same way professors can have a profound effect on, designers and how they see architecture and see themselves. The clients have a real impact on the outcome of the projects. And if you have a great client, it changes absolutely everything. And so that's kind of key. Probably the top projects or the most formidable of my career have been from great clients as well.
And are those, when you're talking about those clients, are they individuals or are they boards? Are they developers? Or
it's mostly individuals.
Okay.
That have are able to kind of navigate, set the tone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can definitely feel the difference between we work with a lot of institutions, right? And when you have someone on the institutional side, and institutions are like multi-headed, they have large organizations.
Yeah.
When you have someone on their side who is either an architect or who has a love for design, who sets the tone for how conversations are being approached, makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Right. So when did you, Vanessa, land at Henning Larsen?
I came to Henning Larsen last year, and
2025.
Yeah, and I had been talking to Henning Larsen for a couple of years. So I think that a lot of it in architecture too is timing. And this Henning Larsen is like the many firms that I've been at, and if I were to kind of put a list of everything I wanted in a firm and what was right for me, this checked all the boxes, and I think that this was, you come kind of full circle, and all of the good and bad things that I've kind of learned in my career, like I definitely feel that this was the right fit for me. It does everything in terms of the right people, the right types of projects, the right focus on what's important in our building of cities and the environment and placemaking. This is, I think, one of the most important practices. I've been following it for years. So this was the kind of like I said, coming full circle where I wanted to be.
What no one is able to see right now are the small smiles that you had as you were describing finally landing here.
Yeah.
And it's the first time where you were smiling, talking about your profession.
Yeah, no, I there's nothing, at least it's the culture.
Yeah.
It's the people. I mean, what drew me to Henning Larsen was the design. There's, without being here and understanding the process, you only see it from the outside, but it's the focus on our, placemaking. That's kind of critical for me. That was always, of interest. So I've been following Henning Larsen for years and years and years. Have one of the first buildings that I had actually, when you're saying you spent a year in one of the projects, going to Harpa and Reykjavik was, eye-opening for me too. And for me that was really interesting too, because it's a collaboration between an artist. Olafur Eliasson did the facade, worked with us on the facade. And so that kind of bringing art and, a collaboration between different designers from different disciplines, I think is also really interesting to me.
I love it. Do you recall and I guess I just moments matter in life, a lot, and I personally try to take stake in like very, very minuscule interactions on a daily basis. So I guess my interest here is, do you recall the day that you had received the opportunity to be able to take on the job, and how it felt professionally to be able to have that conversation for yourself, with your friends, with your family, the validation that you had been able to land where you wanted to land? I don't mean to put you on the spot with the, but
I do remember it, and I have to. Yeah, it was. I mean, there's no question that I was ecstatic, and I think that, especially in leadership roles, I had a lot of conversation. Daniel and I met multiple times. I met 4 or 5 other, actually more than that. You have a lot of conversations to make sure that the fit is right.
Right.
And so,
these are beyond, this is not interview. This is talking with the people to ensure that you're.
It's all part of the interview.
Is it?
It's all part of the kind of, understanding, formal, non-formal. But it just, I was, in a way, it just was kind of a relief, and I mean, ecstatic relief, but it was just like, okay, this is where I want to be. And so it just felt right. But of course, then, when you're for me, there's architecture is also a lot about relationships. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to kind of have built relationships previously and then have to walk away and say, I'm have decided that I'm, going to move on. But it was the right thing.
Okay.
So.
And Daniel, you talked about this, about having the opportunity, 2010, 2011? Yeah. To be able to come and join the practice. And so talk about what it's like for you and your evolution of being at the practice and now doing it. I guess it's across continents. Right. I mean,
I feel like I've been, sometimes it's difficult to figure out where you end and the practice begins, in a sense. I've been here for so long that I became part of the furniture. But I mean,
furniture changes, by the way.
Well, not everything. You buy quality furniture, stays the same.
Oh, good point.
So I mean, we had a couple of right when I began. Like, it was the economy wasn't really good at the time.
Yeah,
and we had this a couple of months after I joined. 13 people were let go, and they were all really great people. And I just remember being like, okay, this is tough.
Real.
And then at the same time, Louis was in the same meeting when he announced that we were not, like, one of our senior partners at the time, that we were not doing so well. He also said, like, but there is an opportunity to go to the Middle East to join the Riyadh office for 6 months because, we have work there. And that was what was keeping the business alive at the time. And everyone was just like, no. And I was like, I'll go. Because I was like, if I go, I'm safe. I'm pretty safe.
Yeah. And I can go work on something exciting.
Yeah.
Before we get back to that, I want to talk for a second about what it means to be a card holder with a company that actually understands travel and how points accumulation can work in your favor. It's called American Express. Have you heard of them? Take a firm like Henning Larsen. Now, they may not personally carry American Express cards, I want to be clear about that, but a practice with a footprint like theirs, offices and projects spread across North America and the world, is exactly who a card like this is built for. Put the right card in a team's hands and you are enabling them to sit in an airport lounge and actually get something done. Work on a proposal, review a drawing set, handle HR, research, an RFP. Instead of just killing time at the gate or feeling like you've got peering eyes over your shoulder at what could be really private content. Once you land, well, you've already booked your hotel through the card's own travel portal, and every point you have earned can go right back into more travel and transfer into other programs. There's help towards things like Nexus or its equivalent too, so getting through the airport is a little less painful, especially financially, which matters when travel for work is already stressful enough. And if you need a rental car when you land, their partners offer upgrades on standard bookings. There's more of that you can find out. And if you want to learn any of this useful information for you or your practice, email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan at issuedforconstruction.ca. And I can connect you with the team at American Express. Now, while you're at it, again, I've said it, I'm going to say it again here. Give the episode and the podcast 5 stars. Actually, you know what? Just give the podcast 5 stars because you can't vote for an individual episode, but you can also follow along on Instagram. Did you know that? You can. You go do it now. Now, back to Daniel and Vanessa.
Getting experience. Do you have a family or anything?
No, I was like fresh out. I mean, a couple of years out of school. Right. So it was an opportunity. It was really great. It was my first, it's also I got to see one of the original Henning Larsen projects, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs there. It was a great learning experience. And it also sort of ignited this interest in going out. And so I did that. I came back. I started doing a lot of competitions. I became part of the competition team. I went to Munich.
How long were you there?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah. Not very long. I went to Munich when we opened up the office there to lead the competition team and start that up. And I spent a year there. I came back. I led the competition team with Nina, who was one of the partners at the time. And then I had burnout. I was teaching full-time next to my full-time. No, sorry. I was working full-time as I was teaching studio at the school.
Wow.
Which is almost full-time.
Yeah.
It was wild, right? I came home. I was doing a competition for this hospital with Kobe, another architect firm. We were teamed up. It was a nightmare. And so I was put into it. It was one of these things where Mette, our CEO at the time, came to me and she's like, this is a shit show and it needs your help. And I was like, yes, because I was always a yes and person, and you joined this, and it was a nightmare. We were just working 80-hour weeks for 4 weeks and trying to work through what this thing was. And it was coming off doing a project here in New York that was time different. So it was just a lot. And I came home I gave a lecture at school, and I just came home and my heart was beating really fast. And I was I couldn't sleep, and I didn't sleep for 3 days. And it just catapulted all this anxiety. And so I stayed home from work for a couple of weeks, which I think was a mistake because I feel you need to hold on to a certain structure.
Yeah, now you're living in.
I was in this darkness spiral of anxiety.
Yeah.
And then lots of therapy later and antidepressants and anxiety. It took me a year and a half to build myself out of that. But I came back to work immediately. The firm was super good about it. There was support from the beginning on. It was just we will make this happen. I started doing 2 hours a day, then 4 hours a day, helping on this thing, helping on this thing. And that was really tough because you come from this, you think you know your body and what you're able to do. And all of a sudden you get cold sweats by just walking through the door, which was wild. So it was just a wild experience, losing complete control of your body and not knowing how to get it back. Yeah. It was super anxious. I was super anxious.
Wow. I got to tell you, I am so happy you're talking about this. I really, really am. There are so few people that are willing to want to share that kind of vulnerability about what it can take to create parameters and to really know yourself and what you are capable of and what takes you beyond that. I appreciate this. Well, I think a lot of people listening might appreciate it too.
Right. I think it's something that's important to be open about because it's a problem of our industry. I think in a lot of industries, and I think my learning from this is that it's very easy. I mean, I was very angry at the time, but I think the thing I learned from that was, the firm had given me a lot of opportunities.
Yes,
but in my personality is also that I'm a nervous anxious overachiever, right? So every time an opportunity was given to me, I was I put out the full road of it needs to do all these things. And when they say this, of course they also mean this, this, and this, and this, which they didn't mean, right? I was putting all this pressure on myself.
Yeah, you're projecting it.
And so I was working nonstop and felt like I was coming short in all these places. And then this competition come on top of everything. And I was also lecturing and teaching and putting together 59 pages. I was just
what are you doing?
Chill out. And so coming back from that, I think the thing that I learned is first of all, it took me a long time to drop the being anxious about getting sick again. But then also being okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? How can we do it? And one of the professors I was working with at the architecture school at the time said to me, is this like, you know what? I think everyone would be much happier in a role one step down from where they are. And that's something that stayed with me, because I was always pressing so hard to become a lead designer, to lead a studio, to lead all these things. And then I was just like, I don't want to lead anything. I just want to sit on a project. And that's, it took me a while to get back to that. And then they were like we had talked about New York at the time. And I was like, I'm not going to.
How many years ago was this?
This was 2017.
Okay.
Trump had just gotten elected, and I like that also was part of my anxiety, I was super anxious about the world, and now that feels like it's just become standard. So just like you live with every day somehow. Yeah. But I don't know, so at that time it was a year. They opened up the office in 2017, and then we had a year of they were like, we really want you to go, you think you can go? And I was like, am I going to get go crazy again if I do this? And then it turned out to be really good, because it just shrank the focus somehow.
And how many people? So you came to New York 2017,
2018.
Oh, 2018.
We just opened up the office. We just moved into this office, I would say. There had been a year before where people had started coming. Amalia was here doing a lot of BD. Nina was here at the time. We had a project in Minneapolis that we were working on. But this was when the office sort of came to itself.
So you only had a couple of people here?
Yeah, we had 4 or 5.
Right. And so what were some of the objectives that you were here to accomplish outside of just looking after the individual project? Well, what were some of the ambitions?
Well, I mean, the ambition was to make it a self-sufficient office, an office that could support itself. Because there has been sort of there was this notion that we could achieve something here. There were projects and there were clients that were interesting. So the goal for me personally was just to be part of a culture. I mean, there was this idea that
be a part or create.
Well, I guess create, because there wasn't really any. There was 3 or 4. Nina was the only other Dane at the time, and so it was this idea of creating, Nina and I had worked closely together, so creating a culture that sort of.
You get to create.
Yeah. And it was nice, right? And it was nice for me at the time because I could focus. I just did one project and I didn't do business development. I just was focused on this one thing, which was Mission Rock in San Francisco, which was my first project here. And it was in many ways very formative because it was a completely different process than I'd ever done before.
In what way?
Well, in Denmark, most things are competition based, where you go away, you get a brief, you sit maybe you meet with a client once, right? Yep. But you sit in isolation. And this was a process where you were with the client from day one. But it was with 3 other design firms. So it was us, Studio Gang, MVRDV, and Work AC, put together in a room to say we each have a building, but figure out how this is going to be a place.
Yes.
So it was a 4-month collaborative process. We would meet every month. We'd have these workshops and you'd come up with the design principles and the sort of objectives of the project together. And I'd never experienced that before. And that sense of collaboration was exciting, right? It's people coming to the table from different perspectives. Yes. You have the client there with you the entire journey. So you have to figure out how do you communicate what you don't know anything yet, right? You're trying to figure out what this thing is, but the client has objectives. They need to go. They're going to see what you're going to see, and you're going to learn together. So you have to figure out how to guide that process. It's difficult. You don't have time to make up your mind before you then get to respond. So it was really a good learning experience. Something that I took away from that is really the power of that collaboration, because it creates trust with the client. And if once you've created the trust, a lot of things are possible, but you have to create the trust.
Yes.
And so that was a good learning experience for me. And we then, we started winning more work. Michael, who was Vanessa's predecessor, came over, and we then really grew slowly. And so when the pandemic happened, we had just won Raleigh City Hall, and from there at the same time we won the Enterprise Research Campus, which was also a collaborative process with Studio Gang at the time at Harvard. And there were these core projects that sort of started forming the way that we were here.
Okay. And can I ask, in terms of the way in which these projects you became a part of the project team, were you answering RFPs or were you invited to bid on it?
I mean, my personal sort of trajectory of projects has always been through relationships.
Yeah.
And so we had, like, for the Enterprise Research Campus, for instance, at Harvard, we had worked with Tishman Speyer on this project that I'd done out of Copenhagen before.
Yep.
There was an introduction where, conversations had started, leadership had introduced themselves, there was interest in what we were doing. And then you form that trust of the relationship, right? We were doing that out of Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. I was leading that team. And so we then started meeting other Tishman Speyer folks in other places. Me and Michael went to Boston to meet with Rustum, who was the client for the Enterprise Research Campus. And he said, well, I do have this master plan. Do you guys do master plans? And Michael was like, we do. Let me find the slide deck and whatever. And there was this conversation that happened. He was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe. And so we got invited. Like, he teamed up with us in Studio Gang, and we put this thing together. We teamed up with a local office in Boston.
Yep.
To do the competition. Of course, competitions are what they are, super stressful, right?
Yep.
And then we won it. And that was so it's like this sort of like one step after the other.
Of course.
Thing. And of course you do a lot of RFP responses, but
and I was hoping you would say it because again, you're listening to this, maintain relationships as much as you possibly can, because you never know where people end up. Mm-hmm. You don't know that you might have had an impact on someone from a meeting by holding a door and being gracious inside that meeting, where you end up, 5 years later, sitting across from them at an opportunity, and they remember that first introduction. Mm-hmm. And what that can lead to is incredible work.
Right.
And it can totally change the trajectory of who you are and where you're working.
Right.
Yep.
Those relationships matter in every way.
And I think it's also finding out when you meet a great client.
Yeah.
I mean, and to me, I would have told this to Rustum also, like he's a great client. Mm-hmm. Like he knows what quality looks like. Mm-hmm. And he also knows that he has goals to fulfill, right? So when you find someone like that who wants, if they understand, like if they can see a value in what you bring to the table, mm-hmm. that is a relationship that's worth fighting for, right? And like something where you help each other out and you figure out, well, okay, what can we do? How can we help you do this? And you form that sort of like productive relationship where it doesn't become that you're presenting to a client, or like it's more like you're engaging in a conversation. Mm-hmm. I think that's great.
So you had touched on it really briefly before about the company, and you just said there, yes, we do planning, and let me show you the deck. Mm-hmm. So Vanessa, do you want to tell us, and Daniel, tell us about what are the different services that are provided, and like how is the company structured? Because it's a part of a group. So can you define what that looks like, and how does that lend itself towards the opportunities for clients? Because there is, I think, a really interesting story in this.
Right. I mean, I can cover the foundation stuff maybe. So in 2020, we became part of the Rambo Foundation. So the Rambo Foundation is sort of an enterprise foundation, which is kind of a common structure in Denmark, but they hold us as an architecture firm, and then they hold our sister company, Rambo Engineering.
Okay.
And that was a strategic decision that was made because it was felt like, we were always at that point already very research focused, but there was also sort of this recognition that the future is cross-disciplinary in a certain way. And the foundation of a lot of our practice and a lot of the projects that we're doing is research. Mm-hmm. So there was this access to the knowledge and the engineering, understanding that we will never be a one-stop shop. We're not AECOM, right? But wanting to get access to some of that knowledge that sort of underlines a lot of the stuff that we do. So being foundation owned means that we're 100% employee owned and foundation owned, which means that we get to reinvest our proceeds into
I didn't know
research.
this.
and into innovation and into philanthropy, which is where the money is being spent.
Come on.
And it also means that we have a long-term lens in a sense, right? It means that our money that is taken out of the company is not filling someone's pockets. It's filling our own pockets in a sense.
Yeah.
So that is, I come to think, I think about this in a sense that it has a long-term perspective, right?
Well, instead of the concept of profit sharing, you're knowledge sharing for what can be decades of future proofing the business.
Right.
It's a great model.
It's a great model. It also means that, there are certain aspects that you can invest in, right? Like we have, the way that it works is that we apply for grants from the foundation to do certain research projects. Last summer we had we had this research project that we built a prototype of a little cooling shelter that we developed in collaboration with the University of Pennsylvania. So funding those partnerships and those explorations together. That's
incredible.
So they had developed this radiant cooling panel that they wanted to see can be applied to urban conditions. We designed a little design for disassembly, reclaimed materials shelter that we then built at Governor's Island. And we just recently got another grant to rebuild it this year. And so the idea is that with being able to invest in these explorative technologies, you can sort of set the starting point of something that's bigger, right? So we've done this in Copenhagen where we've had investments into biogenic materials. We build with these compacted hay modules or straw modules, first on a very small scale, but then have been able to scale it up now
to be used in what capacity?
In construction. So they are basically, you build out of these straw modules.
Oh.
These compacted, they developed off-site. They come to the site, they get assembled. And first we did like a 2,000 square foot little school extension that was like
the walls are built out of compacted hay?
Yeah.
It's basically it's a product. It's called Eco Cocoon.
Okay.
But it was someone in the company, or in the studio, Magnus, who was very interested in this, and he sort of pushed the sustainability team to help fund a sort of a research project that was going to be designing this little school. And it's not an architectural masterpiece. It's more of an explorative study. But then like that experience sort of led us when we won a competition for bestseller for their logistics center, which is 1.1 million square feet.
Of the same product?
Yeah. So scaling up.
Yeah. So it's scaling it up.
Scaling up from a couple thousand
scale.
feet to a million.
So at that scale, obviously it's no longer load bearing, but it's a facade element, right?
It is a facade element. Okay.
So it's like a mass timber structure, which basically is on the facades. It's used as sort of compacted straw module.
Right.
But it is just like being able to prove it, like taking the client to that little building and saying like, here's how it works. Here are the benefits. And they had goals, So I think that is sort of the sort of the model of how to try to do that and how to use it.
So when you were looking at the joint venture with Penn, did they know that there was a research element built in within the company? So they understood that Henning Larsen had the opportunity to be able to go and get a grant and work together on developing this, or?
I think it comes the other way. Like we have an in-house PhD program that's basically where we partner with different universities to create these PhD positions that are in research topics that are also. So part of the PhD student spends half their time at a university, half the time with our practice on projects.
Okay. Yeah. Adding another layer to this.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
So that's enabled partially by the foundation, but it then enables us to have this leg in research.
Of course. So sorry, I'm interrupting you. I just want to make sure that I understand the framework. So a PhD student has the opportunity to apply to the program to be able to get funding to do their research that you can help contribute with.
Yeah. So we formulate, like, for instance, right now we have one on AI.
Yeah.
Which is where we have a PhD student who is working half of the time with Danish university, half of the time in our practice.
Got it.
We also
he's going to move to New York in the next month or so. He's going to be here for a period of time.
To come work within the studio here on additional research.
Yep.
And he's working with a university in the city. So there's basically this it gives us the leg into academia and also into research, but it also makes sure that we get knowledge developed on the topic that is sort of part of the foundational aspects of the practice. We have one on biodiversity, for instance, and urban biodiversity that's happening. So there is this like, these are like knowledge engines that are in the practice for a couple of years, right? One, our global head of sustainability, Jacob, started as an in-house PhD and has been with us. We have now Kritika, our own head of sustainability. So she was the one who was driving that conversation. She was the one who had conversations with Penn, who discovered that they had this technology that they wanted to explore it in urban condition. She then created the connection to the foundation. We wrote an application. We got funding.
I'm smiling right now.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
I because you're talking about like you're developing an ecosystem that gives people this like empowered feeling of doing meaningful research and learning, but then also promoting that internally as an organization. And I get you have, you're one division of a sister company, but just you talk about the two of you have alluded to this already about what you've experienced elsewhere, and now being in a place that is almost like an incubator for knowledge.
Yep.
It's very interesting.
I think it's super interesting. I mean, I usually like to think that research happens not just with the PhD students, right? But it happens in every single project to a certain extent. And we have to be careful in not thinking that research is something that is designing a little cooling shelter only. It's also figuring out facade materials and like building up a vocabulary. That is research on a day-to-day basis. But what I think is great about these pilots, I would like to call them, is that they create a lot of energy and excitement.
Yes.
And that there's a lot of people who are like seeing that happen and are starting to think, how can we make changes on the projects themselves? Because the innovation, the real innovation happens on a project basis by the project teams.
Right.
Right. Like
it
is the day-to-day of trying to meet a deadline and having to submit all this stuff and trying to figure out within that, how can we innovate? How can we innovate, or how can we be explorative, or what can we push?
And talking about like the relationships and collaborations, yesterday we have something called Henning Learnings. So once a week, once every 2 weeks, we'll talk about something in a project that we're working on. And yesterday we talked about facade elements and stone and going to the quarries and how it's cut and how
that's what's on the desk over here.
That's what's over on the table over there. And that all of that comes together by, it was a stone consultant, the contractor, our design team, working through how to put these elements together to actually make it functional. And that type of stuff is like, it's all about a group of people. It's not, we don't work, insularly here in the office, but we work with our consultants as well as like, I think that working with other architects is key in terms of, we've done multiple projects now with kind of groups of architects coming up with either the master plans or, a development, but the knowledge sharing is super important to us. Yes. So I think it goes from a scale of research to working with consultants on a typology or a different material basis to that, a building to a neighborhood to something, even larger, future proofing things. Right. But it's about the relationship building and understanding the experience and knowledge base that other people have and being able to collaborate together on that.
Yeah. I sometimes, someone was asking me recently, like, what made me stay with Henning Larsen for all this time. And I think that there's a cultural element of feeling that you can realize ideas, right? Like at Foster is very much, we're realizing a design system.
Right.
Where you're working under someone else's clear direction. And I think obviously we have a hierarchy in what we do, and decisions need to be made. And sometimes you move a project in a direction, and I make a decision about moving a project in a direction. But I really believe that for me, the exciting moment in a project is when someone comes up with an idea, has an idea, and someone else picks it up and it travels, right? It starts jumping. You can feel it in the room when someone starts talking about someone else's thoughts and gives it a twist and all of a sudden makes it work. And that is like, the 30 minutes of my day that I absolutely live for, right? That's the exciting moment. That's like when it's not necessarily Vanessa or I or Dan or whoever comes up with an idea. It is like when the team sort of formulates something that clicks
around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why I've
takes
stayed.
it to the next level.
It's because it's like, it's a sense that there's a process that's exciting. And I think that's also how, I've always been kind of jealous at the people who had this like singular genius at the head of a firm, like the people who could rely on someone else making those decisions. But I don't think that's the way the world really works, right? Like everything is complex, and you have to figure out how to resolve these big issues together in a way that makes sense. And you have to kill your darlings at some point. And, it's just like,
well, architecture is also, design is open-ended. You can continue on and on and on and on until you have a deadline or somebody has to make a decision. You got to stop this process now.
Yes.
Everybody's got to come around it and sort of say, okay, this is what we're moving forward with. This is when the deadline is that we've got to get the construction drawings done.
Right.
Because we could just keep going, indefinitely.
Yeah.
Talking about something, understanding when something is done. Same with artists and paintings and knowing when is it done. So
tell me about the direction in which you're moving the studio right now in terms of what you're looking for. Is there a scale of project that you're looking for? Is there locations that you're looking for, or that you're pursuing? Is it? And I know that the two of you help look after Americas. So is it the United States? Is it Canada? Is it Central and South America? Like, what does it look like for you in the hopes of growth?
I mean, we're focused. We've been very lucky to have already multiple projects built in the U.S. in the past 8 years, and have about 4 or 5 projects that are coming online in the next year and a half. I mean, that is impressive for a firm that's been in. I mean, a long history, of course.
Yes,
but
young
here.
Locally, yes.
And I think that so we've been focused on certain areas of the country so far. We've got a few projects in California, a couple projects in Boston, in Texas. So in terms of, we've already kind of gotten a foothold in certain locations. And as the projects are under construction and they're coming online, we've been in those locations more so than others. But then, of course, when projects come online, RFPs come out that look great and to sort of fit with our portfolio, then we're obviously going to branch out into different locations as well. But I would say that at least initially it's kind of been, we're focused on Texas, California, the Northeast, of course, New York. Where else we're doing a lot of projects in Toronto right now. So we've got master plans that are in Toronto, a great building that's coming online for Etobicoke, a civic center that has got, commercial space in it. It's got a little art gallery. It's got a lecture hall. It's got a library, some sporting, sport components. And it's going to be a great project. And I think some of those things, and we're seeing a lot of that now, that there is multi-use and buildings that are not just of one typology, but kind of mixed use. And that's really exciting for us too, because we like the kind of diversity of like what that can bring to a neighborhood or city.
Sorry, go ahead, Daniel. What I so enjoy about this, among many things, is that when you talk about those types of projects where it's like a civic center and there's all different kinds of things and different kids can play different sports and they can engage in a safe and well thought out environment, it's refuge from the noise that can exist in the world, and it gives them the opportunity to be able to appreciate the place that they're in and what it can do for them and their vibrancy of like their soul. And put them on a path towards something. I have these fond and distinct memories of going to, in Toronto, there was a place called Nathan Phillips Square. And it was, at one point, it was the main hub for North York's mayor. And there was an indoor pool and they had slides. And I mean, to be honest, I don't even know I have no idea who designed it, but I remember going to that place every now and again for a birthday party and how exciting it was to be able to go and know that there you get to go down, and it's a public pool, but it was almost like a water park, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a full blown water park, but there was like 2 or 3 different slides, and the joy that brought whenever you had the opportunity to go. But walking in through the atrium and seeing this mass space, and you felt small, but also like kind of connected to all the individual floors that were above. Mm-hmm. And you had this feeling as a kid in a place similar to what you describe, and how it made you feel.
Yeah. And that's really important. And you can talk about the different sort of scales of the projects, but whatever's on the ground level too, whether it's a huge tower or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
What's important on the ground level, and what's, the interface between the urban and the building edge is really important to us. And you're focused a lot on that in the past year or two.
I mean, I would say more than anything, I think what's important for us is that the diversity of typologies in the studio, and also diversity of scales.
Yes.
So I think what's been really productive for us is to have urban projects in the studio, but also architecture.
Yes.
Because those two things learn from each other almost in sync. And I think if you manage to have those typologies well, and you manage to establish a conversation that's extremely productive for the process overall. I would love, if I could set one ambition for us, it is to find a client who has an environmental agenda that we could be part of. To have high sustainability ambitions, that really wants to make a difference on the environmental side, that wants to create a building that lives off the site and with the site, that has net zero energy ambitions, that wants to make a positive impact for the neighborhood. I would love to find someone who says I have all these very high ambitions. I don't think it can be possible. And I would love us to try to meet them.
All right.
Because I think that is the goal in a sense. So client, if you're out there.
Yeah. Yes. I was just going to say this. Yeah. Okay. You've heard it. There you go. Make the call. If you don't have Daniel's contact info, you can message me. Don't worry. I will connect you.
I am on the internet. You can find me.
On the intraweb. Look me up. Okay, so outside of practice at this point, what are some of the things that you like to do for yourselves to be able to find the balance from work and pursue in your own ventures, whether it's family, if it's crocheting, if it's playing ultimate frisbee, whatever that looks like.
If you told me that you crochet, that will blow my mind. But
do you crochet, John?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I just figured it would be a really interesting thing to say.
I would say
I don't know.
Yeah. For me, travel is a huge passion. Growing up in Texas, I didn't travel anywhere until I went to college, and then spent a summer in Greece, and that kind of opened everything up for me. And I have really enjoyed that through working as well. I've gotten to see and go to places that I wouldn't normally go to, and meet people that live in the culture, and that's opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I absolutely love doing it. Twice as much. I love doing it with my family, though. So that's something that's been really important. That every year we go 1 or 2 places out of the country together.
Okay.
And explore different things. I think I was mentioning to you, my son was a big skateboarder for a while, and over COVID, my husband and him started a skateboard company, and built decks and used friends for graphics.
Come on.
And so that was really kind of a very interesting part of, a bad situation.
Are they still doing it?
Not as much.
Okay.
But during that time, my son was big into skateboarding. So we went to Barcelona one summer, and, we had to balance everybody's interest, of course. But we would go to different skate parks. Every day we would go to a different skate park, and we would find a cultural institution around there for me to go to see. And then there was food for my husband. So there was like, everybody had their own agenda.
Yep.
But the skate parks took us to neighborhoods we would never have ventured into, a little bit farther off the beaten path. And for me, that was really, really interesting. So I think that travel has been one of the kind of biggest passions of bringing.
I like exploring a city like that.
Yeah.
Like just having a goal of going to a particular place and then seeing where that takes you. That's cool.
Yeah.
And we would sit there, for a couple hours. We would talk to other parents or other, skateboarders, and it was just a different environment.
Right.
And so that kind of brings it all together. It kind of brings architecture, travel, family, different cultures.
Well, and getting, I was going to say the food's also culturally
absolutely
the big tie-in, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yourself?
I actually like going to the gym a lot.
Okay.
It is like the way of getting air into my brain a little bit.
Yep.
And then I've started practicing meditation a couple of years ago when I had that burnout, which has been quite helpful.
And what is that? What does meditation look like? Is it a couple of minutes? Is it a half hour?
I try to do 15 minutes in the morning and then like 5 minutes when I come home. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot. My mind is not necessarily like geared for meditation. It's not like something that I try to do it because it's hard. Yeah. And then I draw a lot. I still like to draw.
What do you draw?
Everything I do, I was a doodle. I downloaded this like online class from a guy who's really good at pen and ink. I've never really been an ink person, so I tried to get more into that, which is kind of nice. And then I'm very social. I have the trajectory of my life was like I was extremely introverted for the first 15
you described
years
that
of my life, and then turned completely opposite. Where now I have to hold myself back that I don't become too frazzled and but I love that. I love being social. New York is a great place for that.
Yeah, I love it. I got to say to you, thank you both for taking time to do this today. Joey, again, thank you for helping set all this up. It's been a pleasure to get to know the two of you. To me, I would say also very, very rewarding to hear of two people that have wanted to find like a place that gave them the purpose that they were searching for, and that you found that at this practice, and that this practice supports all of that in a way that I watch two people that have described challenges of life, and to land at a place where now, as I describe it to you, you have grins on your face. So to Daniel's point that he made a couple of minutes ago, if you have that wondrous project that you don't think is possible, perhaps call two people that are really, really engaged in what they do and that are thrilled to be working at a place that promotes their growth, because you probably get a great project out of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation.